In 1921, the Emerald community wanted to honour 32 local diggers who lost their lives in the Great War. Their names were carved into plaques and placed at the base of newly planted trees from the local Nobelius nursery. It was Emerald's own avenue of honour and named Heroes Avenue. But in the 1950s, Heroes Avenue was widened. The trees and plaques were removed, and the commemorative element of the avenue was lost. The plaques found their way into the Emerald RSL, where they were all but forgotten by the rest of the Emerald community.
We wanted to resurrect Heroes Avenue, which as it was in 1921. And we had the centenary of Anzac upon us, and the RSL movement and also the government wanted to take the opportunity with clubs like ours to commemorate the 100 years of Anzac. My idea essentially was to join the centre of Emerald to the RSL with an Anzac Walk.
Well, he was very much wanting to recreate the original Anzac Walk, and that this was a great opportunity, particularly in the centenary of Anzac, to put something back in place to remember the 32 fallen, and to also create interest in who those people were.
And Pete told me the story of Heroes Avenue and the Avenue of Honour that was established in the 20s and removed in the 50s. And it amazed me that it had taken 65 odd years for someone to get around to actually replacing it.
The three became a committee. Peter, the ideas man, Jeff, the project manager, and Russell, the designer.
When I was involved in the design of the Anzac Walk plaques, I was being fed via email details of the 32 guys and the photos that had been found by the research people. So those guys and their information was on my computer, and I was working with it for some weeks. It was those 32 guys that were the driving force for anything and everything that I did in the project.
Stop 4, uphill, never to return. Further south, the British had been well beaten at Pozières on the Somme, and now it was Australia's turn to have a go. Cockatoo Creek's Harold Fell was on the front line with Arthur Fulton and the Barnes brothers. Russell's design, which included an audio trail telling the stories of the 32 soldiers, was presented by the committee to the Greater RSL, the Emerald Village Committee, and the Cardinia Shire Council.
The elected members of council just said straight away, yep, go off and work with these guys and do everything that you need to do to make this happen. It was quite clearly a great project. It involved a lot of the history of Emerald. One of the things that Cardinia Council does really well is to support community projects, and this was one of those projects which could have been a real standout.
As the project started to take shape, we realised we had to think big in terms of the funding required to make it happen.
There's the opportunity to put an application in for Commonwealth funding, for state funding, and very early on we decided that we should also approach Cardinia Shire Council for their financial support as well.
We had something iconic to do, and then the idea of a statue of the unknown soldier started to take shape.
It seemed that probably the RSL was the best site for it. It was then a matter of how we integrated that to become part of the Anzac Walk, Anzac Place theme.
The stories of the 32 local soldiers who sacrificed their lives were central to the honouring of their memories. Chris Britton and her team at the Emerald Museum, along with Marion Rock, Frank Maguire and local historian James Shaw, researched their backgrounds and brought their stories to life.
I'd heard from time to time people mention the young men of these older families in the area that had gone off to war and some that hadn't come back. And one day I came across a photo of one of them, Eric William John Durrance. And it was a photo of particularly handsome young man. And knowing that he died, it just struck me what a waste of a life. And I researched him on the National Archives website. I got a copy of his service file. I was quite devastated for his mother to find that in Eric's service file, she had given permission for him to go to war. And I could only imagine the heartbreak she felt for the rest of her life having done that.
Local writer Ken Purdom and storyteller John Shields wrote and recorded the stories of the 32 for the audio trail. Stop 2, the glory of Anzac Cove. Just before dawn on April 25, 1915, James Edgecombe, Sid Ferris, Sid Wright and Tom Walker slipped over the side of their transport ship with their battalions and onto the glassy, smooth surface of the Aegean Sea.
I started thinking about writing a drama that would support the project, and that really inspired me when I started writing the audio trail.
As their boats began to beach in what was to become known as Anzac Cove, the zing, zing, zing of Turkish bullets fizzed in the water. Almost immediately, James Edgecombe was wounded.
Both projects needed to have a journey. We needed to start somewhere, we needed to finish somewhere, because whoever was going to listen to the audio trail needed to take a journey to experience what we were saying.
I think the way that the stories were put together and the finished product with the audio trail, it makes it really easy to listen to and to read. It really puts those soldiers just as someone who you would be friends with and someone who you would go down and have a beer with at the pub, and they were just local boys.
Tony Shelton came on board to manage the commissioning and installation of the statue of the unknown soldier and to help organise the opening day celebrations.
The project was well and truly underway when I came on board, and I started to realise the passion and enthusiasm that these guys had generated. I suggested that the Governor-General should be involved in trying to get him to open our project for us, and at which point there was a silence which seemed to last a long time, and they all looked at me. I think Kevin Alexander broke the ice, and he just started to laugh.
He wrote a letter and got him. I still can't believe it.
Pack up your suppers in your old kit bag and smile, smile, smile. While you balloon the bundle like you're a fag, smile, boys, and to the style.
Puffin Billy played a strong part in the history of the Anzacs 100 years ago, and we could see this opportunity to be involved to tell that story for the next 100 years. Puffin Billy has a really strong presence within the community, and specifically with Emerald. And we could see that value of contributing, like many other organisations within the Emerald Township and community, and we wanted to be part of it.
Public involvement was gathering momentum. A post office petition was set up, inviting members of the community to be involved in the opening ceremony by dressing in period costume and coming to the station to meet the train that would carry the soldiers and the Governor-General. The very same train that carried those great war soldiers on it in Anzac Walk, to and from war so many years ago.
I think it's important that communities get involved, people in communities get involved in their communities. And if you have a vision for a great project, you really need to pursue it and get as many key people as you can with particular skills involved, and you can. It is amazing what you can achieve.
For the opening day, I didn't sleep much the night before. We spent an enormous amount of time getting everything as we believe perfect, but there's no guarantees about anything. We had no idea of how many townspeople were going to turn up in period costume.
And then all of a sudden, there was thousands of people there, and it seemed to happen just like that.
The Governor-General, Sir Peter Cosgrove, visited the Dandenongs town of Emerald today.
Puffing Billy has taken a journey back in time to commemorate the original Anzacs. the band played, and hundreds lined Emerald's brand new Anzac Walk to catch a glimpse of a current-day war hero.
He was excited like probably 95% of children who get on Puffing Billy Railway.
Well, how big was that, eh?
He hadn't travelled on Puffing Billy Railway before, but he was like a little kid in a candy store.
The fruition of a lot of work, isn't it?
It was also a day that relatives and friends of the fallen 32 would never forget.
Fred was wounded twice. He was sent back to Australia, discharged and signed up again. And when he went back the second time was when he was killed.
Lynn and I are thrilled to be here today to commemorate the reopening of the Anzac Walk and the official opening of Anzac Place.
And the event became so big with planes and cars and bands and the Governor-General and Puffing Billy Railway involved us. It had it all.
The opening ceremony had been a fitting tribute to those it was commemorating, and a community stood proudly in remembrance. But what was its legacy?
To me, the opening ceremony wasn't the focus. It was all about, from my perspective, the 32 guys who didn't come back.
We owed it to Emerald to bring those 32 young men back into Emerald.
The RSL now has turned itself around from being a place where returned servicemen go to being a major focus of the community and of the neighbourhood. And so Anzac Walk and Anzac Place has become a very big part of that.
To me, they just all live again. Every time somebody remembers them, they're all alive. Their life wasn't in vain.
I'd like to think that the 32 guys are looking down with some pride and satisfaction that they've been remembered, and there is a permanent reminder of them and what they did.
The Anzac Place and Anzac Walk now offer a great opportunity for the townspeople to be able to pass on to the next generation what really happened back then. We must remember that there was tens of thousands of soldiers killed in that one war. It was nothing short of horrific. There's no good wars, but this was an especially bad one. So therefore, we've got an opportunity here to be able to draw the townspeople together on a reasonably regular basis and reinforce their memory of this, what happens in wars and why we should do everything to never go there again.
It's part of Emerald, and when you drive past it, you walk past it, and I look at it and think, yep, there'll be certain moments in the project that'll keep flooding back to me and thinking, yeah, this is probably one of the better things I've participated in my life.
I had the pleasure of bringing my son to the project a few times. He's 9 years old. And he said to me, Dad, these men were just boys. And for a 9-year-old to actually grasp that, I think shows how wonderful that story is told. When he said that, there was a tear in my eye that this was worthwhile.
But as year follows year, more old men disappear. Someday no one will march there at all. Waltzing Matilda, oh, come a-waltzing Matilda with me. And their ghosts may be heard as they march by that billabong. Oh, come a-waltzing Matilda.